In Radical Candor, Kim Scott shares her proven advice about how to become a caring, honest, and effective leader. Her extensive experiences with numerous startups, as well as Google and Apple, have left her with a wealth of knowledge about how to build and maintain trusting relationships with and among team members as a boss, as a leader. These relationships have the power to foster a collaborative culture within teams and companies and drive their success. The concept of radical candor is a simple one, which involves caring personally about those you lead and challenging them directly to encourage personal growth. Scott provides countless strategies, countless examples of how to bring about the best in yourself and those you work with and lead your team to unprecedented success. Here's what you'll learn about in this book summary. We'll talk about how to be both deeply human and highly effective as a leader. We'll discuss how to successfully challenge other people and encourage them to challenge you. And we'll touch on how to stay centered in order to bring about your best self and then bring that to work on a day-to-day basis. Crucial quotes from the book. Quote, "Your relationships are core to your job." Quote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Quote, "Bosses guide a team to achieve results." A quick tweetable summary before we dive into the big ideas. Candor and care are the keys to being a kick-ass boss. Big idea number 1. Good leadership requires emotional presence. Quote, "To have a good relationship, you have to be your whole self and care about each of the people who work for you as a human being. It's not just business, it's personal and deeply personal." The 3 key responsibilities of leaders involve guidance, team building, and results. Building trusting relationships is the key to success in all 3 of these areas. One important way to build these relationships is to care personally and deeply about those who report to you, the people that work for you. As a young college graduate, Scott was working for a New York diamond company in Moscow. Her job was to convince some Russian diamond cutters to leave the company that they worked for and come and work for her and her company. And she thought that the key to motivating them to do so was to offer them more money. Now, what they really wanted was to have a picnic, complete with vodka and Russian delicacies. So she made it happen. She wined them and dined them, so to speak. During the picnic, they asked her questions about her knowledge of diamond cutting technology and the purpose of the job she was trying to hire them for, and if she would teach them English. She agreed to do all that stuff and shared all the knowledge that she had with them. She also agreed to a weekly picnic lunch with those people as well. Eventually, they asked her if she would be able to help them get out of Russia with their families if things got bad there. She realized at the moment that the one thing she could offer them that their current employer was not was to show that she cared deeply about them personally, that she really cared about what happened to them and their safety and well-being and their emotional well-being, aside from their physical well-being. And this is what enabled her to successfully recruit them. Sometimes leaders fail at one of the most important things, if not the most important thing about leadership, which is to care. Sometimes leaders fail at caring personally because they are obsessed with remaining professional. But when professionalism outranks allowing people to show emotion and to be who they truly are, the result is unhappy employees. Fred Kaufman, the author's coach at Google, coined the popular phrase, "Bring your whole self to work." Behind this mantra is the idea that even as a boss, even as a leader, manager, it's okay to show some vulnerability because it models for others that they can do the same. The other barrier to caring personally is acting superior because you are the boss, quote unquote. Nothing works harder against building trusting relationships than arrogance and superiority. Caring personally is not about acknowledging birthdays or memorizing names of family members or making small talk. Caring personally means truly investing time and figuring out what is most important to the people you work with. This will help you figure out what motivates them, as well as what doesn't motivate them. And once you know what's important to your people, you can guide them in reaching their personal goals and making what's important actually come to fruition in their lives. Chances are, as a result, they'll pay it forward and guide others, and they will learn to start leading in the way that you lead, because it all starts at the top. So they'll pay it forward, guide others that they care about to do well also. And this will be even more rewarding for you and your organization as a whole. Big idea number 2. Challenging others and letting them challenge you is an excellent way to strengthen relationships and cultivate collaboration. Quote, "The source of everything respectable in man, either as an intellectual or as a moral being, is that his errors are corrigible. He is capable of rectifying his mistakes by discussion and experience, not by experience alone. There must be discussion to show how experience is to be interpreted." Joshua Cohen. To build a true and effective collaborative culture, you have to learn how to directly challenge those you work with. When you directly challenge someone, it shows them that you actually care enough to tell them what's going well and what's not going well. When you encourage others to challenge you, it proves that you're not afraid to admit your own mistakes, and that you're dedicated to actually fixing the mistakes that are made by you or other people. A lot of people are reluctant to challenge others because it often leads to conflict. The trick here is to accept the fact that people will sometimes get mad at you and to encourage their anger or pain and then work through it. It isn't a good idea, Kim tells us, to pretend that what you said, did not, or should not have hurt. Just show that you care and offer to help fix the problem. Building up the amount of trust necessary to challenge and be challenged can take time, but is well worth your time because it can lead to both personal and team growth. Scott tells a story about the beginning of her career at Google, when she gave a presentation to the founders and CEO about the exceptional growth they had been experiencing as a company. After the presentation, Kim's boss, Cheryl, asked if she could speak with her about something. She started by telling Kim that she had a great career ahead of her with Google, and then proceeded by giving her some specific details about what she had actually done well, adding that she herself had learned a few things from the way that Kim presented. She then told her that she needed to work on not saying so much when presenting, and offered to find her a speech coach. Now, Kim tried to brush the feedback off as silly, but her boss told her that she was actually really intelligent, but all of those peppered into her presentation made her sound stupid. Now, let's take a moment to quickly break this dialogue down. Kim Scott's boss, Cheryl, provided her with excellent guidance while directly challenging her about her verbal tic. Her boss addressed the positives in an authentic way and then directly addressed the problem and offered help. Now, Scott did actually end up working with the speech coach, and she ended up having more respect for Cheryl because of the way she directly handled the situation. But Kim didn't just learn how to sharpen her speaking skills after this interaction. She also learned how to better guide the people she led. Big idea number 3. Great leaders provide guidance. Quote, "Giving meaningful feedback is hard, so it is important to gauge how we are doing at all times." Unquote. In order to give good guidance, It's essential to care personally and challenge directly. There are several things that can happen when you try to do these and fail. The author created a Radical Candor framework to help leaders understand this. The 4 quadrants in this framework are Radical Candor, Ruinous Empathy, Obnoxious Aggression, and Manipulative Insincerity. Giving meaningful feedback is pretty difficult, really difficult at times. So it's important to gauge how we are doing at all times. Radically candid criticism entails challenging the people that you work with to continue achieving success. Even if things are going well, it's important to give clear, direct guidance. Now, when you fail to show that you actually care personally, but you do challenge directly, you're being obnoxiously aggressive. Now, sometimes obnoxious aggression helps achieve successful results, but in the long term, it actually ruins relationships. Criticism becomes a dangerous weapon instead of a path to improvement. We must always remember to look at others as human beings. That said, Kim also tells us that if you can't be radically candor, the next best thing is to be obnoxiously aggressive. This is because most people admit that they'd rather work for a competent jerk than an incompetent nice person. Obnoxiously aggressive praise can be just as damaging as obnoxiously aggressive criticism. Sometimes well-intentioned bosses give belittling compliments. One example is that of an email sent out by a Silicon Valley boss to 600 people to commend the 70 of them that received bonuses. He tried to be specific with his praise, but it was clear that he had just asked his managers to send some information about why they deserved the bonuses, then copied and pasted what they had sent, some of which came off as pretty offensive. For example, one of the emails said she has done all of the dirty work in getting XYZ off the ground with endless spreadsheets, updates, legal calls, and has done a great job, well above her level 3 status. Now, this employee probably didn't feel all too great about learning that she was given the dirty work, quote unquote, or that she deserved to be at a higher level than 3. This boss actually did the opposite of showing that he personally cares about his employees. His approach would fit into the obnoxiously aggressive quadrant. Another way to miss the mark on radical candor is through manipulative insincerity. This happens when a boss is more worried about being liked or trying to gain some kind of advantage than directly challenging his or her team members. It's dishonest, and it actually never leads to a positive outcome. Johnny Ive, Apple's chief design officer, gives a great example of manipulative insincerity from when he worked with Steve Jobs. Ive recalls that he was holding back on directly challenging his team, and Jobs actually asked him why he had not been direct. He told Jobs it was because he cared about his team. Jobs then told him it was clear that what he really cares about is himself. He cares more about himself and just wanted his team to like him more than he wanted to be honest. Ive then admitted that he immediately knew Jobs was right. Bottom line, in the long run, don't ever try to fake caring personally. Your employees will see through you. Ruinous empathy occurs when you let problems or mistakes go unaddressed to avoid hurting feelings or creating stress or pressure. When you give praise that's designed to make a person feel good rather than push that person towards better or even greater work, you are practicing ruinous empathy. Sometimes trying to be nice and trying to make sure everyone on a team gets along impedes improvement. It doesn't often take long for employees to realize that positive comments without specifics are not going to help them grow. Saying something positive for the sake of saying something positive undermines people's strengths and their hard work, and sometimes can cause problems among team members. It's important, before giving praise, to make sure you understand the specifics of what actually occurred, so that you can give specifics for your employees to build on and not leave anyone who was involved out. You want to start, in order to do this, by asking your team for criticism, rather than dishing it out. This proves that you know you can be wrong and that you definitely want to know when you are. Now, this also helps you understand what criticism feels like, so you can become better at giving it. Asking for criticism is an excellent way to build trust. Even if you are unfairly criticized, it's important to not judge the criticism, but to listen carefully and be grateful for the feedback in the first place. If you work to provide honest feedback directly and show that you personally care while doing so, you will be practicing radical candor. Big idea number 4. Work hard to understand the people you work with. Quote, in order to build a great team, you need to understand how each person's job fits into their life goals. Unquote. Every team needs both rock stars and superstars. The rock stars are the stable people who are happy doing what they are doing and are not looking to be promoted. They are reliable and need to be rewarded for that. The superstars, on the other hand, are the team members who have higher goals, higher ambitions. When the author designed her first management class for Apple, she thought that a good management team would focus all of its energy and efforts on the most ambitious and goal-oriented team members rather than the people who were doing great work and happy where they were. But she actually learned that this was the wrong approach. The focus, she realized, needs to be on figuring out what each person on your team really wants, and then having radically candid conversations so that you don't upset the rock stars or totally bore the superstars by holding them in place. At times, it's necessary to shift from the idea of talent management to that of growth management, so that people who you work with can move toward their goals, so you can help them work toward their goals. You must get to know each team member personally and consider their results as well as their positive attributes. Once you know each team member well, have that relationship with them, you can consider how their current role on your team fits into their aspirations for the future. Doing this will help you put or keep them in the right roles and give them accurate assignments and projects. People on a steep growth trajectory want to have increased impact over time, while those on a gradual growth trajectory want to make steady improvements rather than dramatic ones. People shift between trajectories throughout their lifetimes and careers as well, by the way. And it's not your job to create passion for those on your team. Your job is to get to know each person well and create the work climate, the conditions that will allow them to find their own passions. As a boss, as a leader, make sure you do not ignore the people who are doing a good job because you want to avoid micromanaging them. Invest the time to get to know those you have chosen to be on your team, so you can give them the tasks appropriate not only to their talents, but also to their goals. Focus on becoming a partner with each and every one of your team members. Big idea number 5. Don't tell people what to do. Quote, the ultimate goal of radical candor is to achieve collaboratively what you could never have achieved individually. And to do that, you need to care about the people you're working with. Unquote. To help your team achieve greatness, care about the people you work with and combine your thinking with theirs. Scott recounts how, when she arrived at Google, she was so focused on getting quick, positive results that she wasn't paying any attention to the important things that were not happening within her team. She was leading a team of sales and support employees, and although the business, AdSense, was growing extremely quickly, everyone on the team was doing a little bit of everything. When the numbers dipped, this made it hard to target the problem. She investigated and found that her team was not really managing accounts very well at all. She split the team into 5 smaller teams and gave each leader one thing to be responsible for, and she shifted who would report to who so that people's managers would better understand what they were doing. The result? 3 of the 5 leaders that reported to her complained about her to her boss and eventually left her team. They did not like her autocratic style. Her boss shared with her that the changes she made were positive in theory, but the way she made them was a big turnoff. She had not taken the time to include her team members in the decision-making process or even explain her decisions to them. Luckily, she was given a chance to hire replacements and start fresh. The key idea here is to become a master of leading without telling people what to do. And in order to do this, and to do it well, it's important to get good at challenging people directly. Why? Because collaboration doesn't happen automatically. You've got to set the stage. The authors created a process called the Get Stuff Done wheel. Now, the first steps on the wheel involve listening to the ideas of those on your team and creating an environment in which they feel like they can talk and listen to each other. This environment needs to include the opportunity to clarify the ideas so that those listening completely understand them and their value. Next, ideas should be debated. Finally, a decision can then be made. Next, it'll be your job as the boss, as the leader, to communicate the decision to the rest of the team and make sure they understand that the idea was actually a good one. After the idea is executed, pay close attention to the results and repeat the process. It's important to not skip any steps and not to get stuck for a long time on any single one either. You will always want to keep things moving along on the Get Stuff Done wheel. In the book, Scott provides several examples and strategies for each step on the Get Stuff Done wheel. The first of which is creating an environment where people feel like they can talk and listen to each other. For example, Johnny Ivey, the chief design officer at Apple, says that the most important role of a manager is to give the quiet ones a voice. On the other hand, Eric Schmidt, chairman of Alphabet Inc., Google's parent company and ex-CEO of Google, has the motto simply to be loud. These happen to be 2 very different, but also very effective strategies. Think about your personal listening style and how you might create a culture among your team members in which everyone is heard. To get your team to listen to each other, make sure you have a practical way for them to generate ideas and to give complaints. Be sure to address any issues that come up as quickly as possible and explain why some issues are not being addressed. For example, the author, while at Google, created an ideas team to deal with the large amounts of good ideas that were coming to her daily. She also helped them come up with a few guiding principles for the team. They needed to give each idea equal and dedicated listening time. And if they rejected an idea, they needed to have a good reason which was clearly explained as to why. Ideas they didn't reject needed to be then implemented with support. They were also allowed, by the way, to assign action items to their boss, the author, Kim Scott, each week. Kim had several strategies to help when people were not communicating well also. During meetings, when it seemed that only a few people were talking, she would stop and go around the table to make sure everyone had a voice. She would also walk around to physically block those who were monopolizing conversations. She also used the strategy of talking to people before meetings, either asking them to speak up more or to just quiet down and not talk as much. To help with the clarifying phase, create a culture in which people are able to think and talk things through with you. Give space and time for people to clarify their ideas and push yourself and others to be unmistakably clear. Encouraging people to find the holes in new ideas encourages clarification. At Pixar, a strategy called plussing is utilized. Plussing requires employees to provide solutions to the problems that they're pointing out when talking about new ideas. Work hard to be clear yourself. If you understand your team members and what motivates them, as well as what their knowledge and skill levels are, you will know what details must be included and what can be left out in your communications to them. Make sure there is a culture of debate on your team. To do this, ensure that the focus stays on the idea being debated rather than veering off into people's feelings and egos. You may need to set some ground rules to be used for each debate as well. Another strategy is called role switching. If a person is arguing heavily for option A, for instance, encourage her to switch it up and argue for option B. This encourages all team members to consider other perspectives and to listen carefully. Your job is also to watch for emotional burnout during debates. It's possible that team members can become so emotionally charged and too emotional and or tired to have a productive debate in the first place, and it's your job to recognize this and postpone until a better time. Once a debate has happened, it's time to make a decision. Keep in mind that you're not the autocratic decision maker here. Your job is to get as many solid facts as possible, and then arm the people closest to the facts with the power to weigh in on the decision that needs to be made. Once an important decision has been made, it's important to get the people who were not involved in making it on board. Do not just expect people to get on board without being persuaded. You've got to influence them. You need to explain the decision itself and also address any emotional responses to it. If people have problems with it, talk about it. If you have gotten to know your team members well enough, you'll be able to anticipate emotional responses that may occur. To build and maintain credibility, remain humble at all times. For example, as Apple's success rate skyrocketed, Jobs always had a picture of a couple of nerds with a clunky computer in the background to remind himself and his team members of their humble beginnings. Finally, when it's time to take action, do not waste the time of your team members. Avoid scheduling lengthy, time-wasting meetings and have a plan going into each meeting. Do not be afraid to get involved directly with the work in addition to managing it as well. This will ensure your understanding of the work itself and build up your credibility. Be ready to learn from successes and mistakes. Sometimes it's easy to become emotionally attached to the work, but you must always be willing and able to step back and acknowledge what went well and what did not in order to learn and grow. Big idea number 6. To be an effective leader, you've got to stay centered. Quote, "You can't give a damn about others if you don't give a damn about yourself." Unquote. You cannot truly thrive and truly care about other people unless you master the art of taking good care of yourself. In order to be a good leader, to be a great leader, an effective one, you have to be able to avoid getting overwhelmed. Rather than thinking about having a work-home life balance, try to think of the two as integrated. If you know you need 8 hours of sleep, for instance, every night to be effective, plan your schedule so that happens, and not at the expense of work that needs to be done. Figure out what de-stresses you, and do more of it when things get hectic. Once you figure out what your stress relievers are, schedule them on your calendar just as you would any other important meeting or activity. Do your best to never skip them. Make your team members feel like they are free at work by giving up total authority. Give them control. You want everyone on your team to bring their very best every day, physically, emotionally, and mentally. If you can focus more on relationship building than being an authoritarian, that will encourage them to do so as well. You want to figure out the best way to productively socialize at work. This will build your relationships. Find ways to get to know your team members that do not feel forced or involve alcohol. Do things like walks, picnics, or meeting each other's families. This stuff can be beneficial, but don't make them mandatory. Also, pay attention to your own emotions. Be honest about them. If you're having a bad day, it's totally okay to tell those you work with as long as you explain that it's not about them or their work. Also, if you have a huge emotional setback, it might just be a good decision to stay home for the day. React appropriately to the emotions of others. Acknowledge them, but do not try to downplay or control them. Don't ignore them either. Be compassionate, ask questions, and never be defensive about why they are upset. Don't tell them how to feel. A few practical suggestions that Kim Scott recommends are to just keep a box of Kleenex a short walk away so you can give an upset person, for instance, a break by getting it, or offer a bottle of water and give them a moment of pause to collect themselves while they open it. These are little, subtle things, actions that you can take that display compassionate leadership. For more difficult conversations, you want to go for a walk, which feels more collaborative, rather than sitting at a desk and facing each other, which feels more combative. Big idea number 7. To prevent burnout and boredom, put the right people in the right roles. Quote, understand people's motivations and ambitions to help them take a step in the direction of their dreams. Unquote. One way to learn how to motivate all of your team members toward success is to have career conversations with each person that reports to you. This is a way to learn about their goals and find ways to help them reach those goals. Talk to them not only about their career goals, but also about their past, their life story, and hopes for the future. The co-founder of Radical Candor Incorporated, Russ Laraway, developed 3 questions to help career conversations when you have them with your people. Question number 1, what's your life story? Ask your team member to tell you his life story and pay close attention to changes he made in his life. This will tell you about his values, motivations, and goals. Question number 2, what are your dreams? Ask about his dreams. This will tell you what he hopes to be doing at the height of his career and what his best life might actually look like. Don't make the conversation too professional in nature. You want to give space for him to really talk about his dreams instead of just telling you what he thinks you want to hear. This will help you guide him in directions that help him work toward those dreams. In turn, he will enjoy his work more and want to stay rather than leave. Question number 3. What's your 18-month plan? Ask what the 18-month plan for the team member's life is. This helps people figure out how far they are from their goals and how to get there. And it helps their leaders help them find opportunities to get the skills they need. Finally, make a list of how the current job or role can change to help each team member move closer to their dreams. Be specific about who they can learn from, books they might read, and or professional development that they can seek out. Big idea number 8. Use your time wisely. Quote, obviously, every meeting comes with a significant cost, time. So, it is important to minimize the duration, frequency, and number of people required to attend. Unquote. There are several types of meetings that can be very practical and productive. One of Scott's favorites is the one-to-one conversation, which should be held with every member of your team with the dual purposes of clarifying and listening. Go into these meetings with the mindset and goal of wanting to get to know the other person better. Schedule them at a time that works well for you and try to hold them with each team member once per week for about 50 minutes. Include career conversations when possible, and do not cancel the one-to-one conversations even if you have to reschedule other things. Once you've got those bad boys on the books, keep them there. Allow the team member to set the agenda. Ask follow-up questions like, how can I help? Or what can I do or stop doing that would help? Encourage team members to share new ideas with you and encourage criticism of your work. One-to-one meetings are an excellent way to stay in the loop and get to know your team members better. Staff meetings, when held effectively, can save you time by bringing up new problems, allowing sharing of updates in a practical way, and keeping everyone on the same page. Effective staff meetings should have 3 main priorities: to review the past week's progress, to share important news or updates, and to allow teams to clarify the decisions and debates that are coming up. The actual debates and decision-making should not occur within these meetings, by the way. Schedule debate meetings for debating the major issues your team might be grappling with. Debate meetings should lower stress and tension if the team members all know that they are just there to debate their ideas and that no decision will be made within that meeting. Debate meetings slow down decision-making and ensure the crucial facts are actually considered rather than hastily making a decision. These meetings will also add to your culture of openness and discussion. Your debate meeting team should come out of the debate meeting with a solid idea of the facts, the issues, and the choices in front of them. Big decision meetings should take place after debate meetings and are where final decisions are actually made. Notes should be taken. Egos must be checked at the door. The reasoning behind them should be made crystal clear. All hands meetings include presentations to help team members understand why and how decisions are being made. These meetings should include question and answer sessions so concerns can be heard and addressed. You must make sure that your team has time to complete all the action steps that come out of each of these important meetings also, which is why it's important that you not hold any unnecessary meetings. Make these meetings important. Another practical strategy is to use what are known as Kanban boards with to-do, in progress, and done columns. Again, that's to do, in progress, and done columns, 3 separate columns. With these Kanban boards, Post-its of varying colors to represent teams or people are placed in the various columns. This makes it easy to see when or where problems are occurring, and it's a great visual for progress being made as well. To learn more about Kanban boards, you should just Google it so that you can get a visual representation of what this actually is if you're not sure. In regards to your own schedule, it's important to schedule personal think time into your daily calendar or it's never going to happen. Consider it non-negotiable and encourage your team members to do the same thing. Walk around so you know what's going on at all times also. To ensure this happens, schedule at least an hour a week for this in your manager's calendar. Use this time to ask people what they're working on. This is a great way to find and fix small problems before they snowball. It also shows your team members that you're willing to dig in and do what you can to help. Scheduling and using your time and that of your team wisely goes a long way in building a positive and productive team culture of radical candor. Closing notes. The key takeaway from this book is this. Radical candor involves caring personally and challenging directly, and the development of these skills can be absolutely life-changing. A few actionable insights. Get to know the people that work for you and with you on a deeply personal and human level. Really work to get to know them. Pay close attention to the culture that you create and work to make changes whenever necessary. And finally, give honest, direct feedback regarding what is going well and what is not going well at all times.